Welcome, everybody, to The Limit. It's been a long time coming. It is Season 1, Episode 1. Your host here, Matt Gibson, along with Phil Hunt today. How you doing, Phil?
Hey, I'm good. How about you?
Doing all right. Sun's out. Looks like we're almost through winter here, hopefully. So it's looking good.
Yeah, and I'm piddling around here in the shop.
What are you making?
Living the dream in my messy shop here because it's a mess. I'd be embarrassed if you saw the whole thing, how dirty it is.
Well, what are you messing with?
Too much wood dust and too much paint overspray.
Yeah. What are you messing with?
Oh, I've been playing around with a glide bait. We're trying to branch out into more of that. I mean, a lot of you'll know I own PH Custom Lures, and we primarily have built balsa baits for between 15 and 20 years. I'm not sure. And did custom painting before that, but we've been getting into the glide bait deal, the resin baits, and I played around with some wooden ones, but honestly, the wooden ones are so hard to keep the finish on them. You know, they swell, and it's just hard to, and they're so time consuming. But this is a herring-shaped one we're getting ready to introduce. Of course, we have a shad-shaped one. I don't have a finished one laying here. I've got a more of a trout-shaped one, so I want to dabble around and play. Well, I don't want to dabble. I mean, we do every bait. We hand weight them all, so if I'm going to do this, I want to have really, really good ones. I want, to have one of the best in the nation, and it'll take some time. But that's what I've been playing with. And then we're coming out with some hair jigs and stuff like that. Some smallmouth style hair jigs, a lot of little things that underspin. So I'm trying to do as much as I can so that we're just not like a one pony shop, just not balsa. So of course we build buzz baits and jigs, and I've got a line of spinner baits, had a mold made, got a really, really nice spinner bait. I'm just waiting on blades, and all of our jigs and spinner baits and buzzers are hand tied. So, yeah. But this is not about me. That's not what this podcast is about. So,
right. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think it was sometime after Christmas. You and I kind of chatted, and you had this idea of coming up with a podcast, and then also that kind of sparked some things. And it's not only going to be a podcast with just pros on it. It's going to be average Joes, pros, regional guys, bait makers, just really an all-around show that really highlights kind of all different points in the fishing industry.
Yeah. And what I noticed, like, here's something that I don't like, and I know this is probably, if you're going to do podcasts, this is or YouTube channels, is probably not the smart way about it, but you see so many of them. It's all this negative clickbait stuff and all the fighting about forward-facing sonar, and I know that gets views. And look, I'm not a forward-facing sonar fan because I'm in the tackle industry. It has wrecked the tackle industry. I mean, you can sell every jig head you can pour and every minnow bait, but it's hurt crankbait and jig and spinnerbait sales. And I see guys that make comments about how awesome the tackle industry is, and it's not in trouble. Well, it is. You can see it's really affected it because so many guys don't throw anything but minnows and jig heads. And it's even hurting the jerkbait market because what I've got from some of the guys who own jerkbait companies and the sales reps is what's happening is, and I'm not trying to be negative on forward-facing sonar because I think the technology and all that is really, really cool. I just don't like what it's doing to the tournaments and the tackle industry. But like jerkbait sales are not as good because, and I never thought about this till someone told me this in the industry, that they can see the wood. They don't lose as many. So yeah, everybody throws them, but they're not losing as many because they can steer them around the tree limbs. And I'd never even thought about that. And then, I watched the thing that, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the one that Skeet Reese just made, sitting in his boat, and he talked about how it's killing the tackle industry and the negativity. But I didn't want to. You and I have talked about it a lot. I didn't want the podcast to be all that about that negative stuff. I would like this to be like a no BS fishing talk.
Yeah.
And you know, and I talk like we're obviously gonna have some big pros. We've already talked with James Watson. Of course, Bill Lowen's one of my best friends. He's going to be on here real soon. We'll have Fletcher Shryock. I mean, a lot of guys on there. But you and I thought it would be cool to have regional guys that are known in their area, and get guys to actually talk and tell the truth about what they're doing. And I think people would find that interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. We're just coming off of show season here in Indiana and in the Midwest, and there's still some shows going on. But really, what I equate it to is like just at those fishing shows when you see your fishing buddy, just chatting about fishing. That's really what we're trying to do here is just have those talks like you would have it at any tackle shop or any boat show. Just talking fishing. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I hope people find that interesting, and you have an interesting background as too. I know you've done a lot of podcasts because you're kind of pretty well known around the Midwest area for your kayak. You do a lot of stuff with the kayaks tournament and work with some of the shops and things like that. And I've really been impressed with how, especially it seems like in the last 5 years, it's like exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know guys who actually, like I got a buddy here who has almost a new Skeeter in the garage, $100,000. And he never even put plates on it last year. He fished out of his kayak all year. He said he's like addicted to it. So
yeah, it's great. Yeah. Well, my favorite thing personally about kayak fishing is man, it really takes you back to those days when you didn't have to worry about forward facing sonar. You didn't have to worry about having the biggest, fastest boat out there and all of that stuff. It just takes me back to my roots of just getting out on the water and just fishing and going out there and casting for them and finding those fish and feeling your way around a lake or a stream. So,
yeah.
So you mentioned, the Limit Podcast or the Limit here. We do have an email address. It's the Limit Podcast 5@gmail.com. Feel free to email us if you have any questions or if you want to see more of something, less of something. If you have an episode idea, Instagram, the Limit Podcast, Facebook is the Limit Podcast, and also we have the YouTube channel, the Limit Podcast. And with that YouTube channel, you're going to see a lot of informational stuff as well. Phil's, I know he's invested in some cameras and some things to show kind of how they fish down there and how to use baits and things like that and capture some of that. So you're going to see tips, tricks, fishing, and just all kinds of informational things on that YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah. And also, I've had a PH Custom Lure YouTube channel forever, and I was locked out because of the password.
Yeah.
And we finally got back into there. So you're going to start seeing more stuff on the PH Custom Lure channel too, and just little short clips and things like that. And I think what you said, like I would love to hear what ideas people have for like for episodes. I think it would be great because I want to make sure we give people what they want. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be like everybody like, oh yeah, I don't want to go over there because it's always this negativity or like I saw some comments on one the other day, and I actually think it's a really good podcast. I enjoy it. It's like it's a YouTube channel actually. And these guys were saying, well, all you do is advertise your stuff. It's just one big giant advertisement and I don't want that either. You know what I mean? Obviously I would like to sell PH and I do, but I would like and that's the thing too. Anybody that we get on here, they're feel free to plug their sponsors. I mean, I think everybody needs that, you know?
Yeah. We're not tied to anything. Like you said, would love people to go and check out your website, PH Custom Lures, buy baits there. But also, you're not just a one trick pony. I mean, you have vast knowledge of many different things. Not just balsa baits, but vast knowledge on spinner baits, swim jigs, all of that stuff. So by no means is this going to be a cranking only type of podcast.
Oh, no.
YouTube. We're going to blow it out of the water and we're going to talk about all kinds of different things.
Yeah. And I'm hoping to learn from the viewers too. Like I'm going to be, I know this one's recorded because it's in its infancy, but I know as long as language is good, we're going to do some live ones. You know what I mean? I don't want my 80-year-old mother to get on there or my Aunt Christine. And she's like, oh my God, Philip, I can't believe what you did. So as long as the language is good, I'm looking forward to doing live ones where we can actually learn from people and see, and you can comment on there, and we can just kind of go with the flow and maybe have the audience more involved in, instead of just watching us talk or watching whichever guy we have on here talk. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're planning on every Wednesday releasing an episode is the goal. So every Wednesday you'll be able to find the podcast on all of the podcasting platforms, and then Bill, we also talked about doing a giveaway. So a giveaway, we're gonna really try to grow the YouTube channel quickly. So the Limit Podcast YouTube channel, once we get 500 subscribers, we're going to give away some baits, and going to give away some of your great baits that you have there. Maybe even throw something a little special in there for the folks.
Right. And I thought that, and this does, obviously I'll make a little money off of this, but I get asked this a lot about custom colors. I thought what I would do maybe is paint like 5 or 10 custom colored baits once in a while. And when we do an episode, I can show one stuff that's not available to Tackle Warehouse or stores or on my site, and would allow guys, like, especially like the collectors and stuff, to do some things like that, you know? And then Matt Gibson, I just lost my train of thought. So there's somebody walking around outside my building here. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to hear like what regional guys, what they have to say. If we can get guys to really open up, and I know a lot of those guys are going to be tournament guys, and they don't want to tell everything. But if we can get a lot of guys just to really open up, like, you know, like say some hammers at Gunnersville and Chick, and not just those big famous lakes, but like local areas, like some Ohio River guys, Mississippi River guys, and guys up north that chase the smallies around. Because if you think about it, like everybody I know goes up north smallmouth fishing that lives where we live in the Midwest. It's within 4 or 5 hours max of like really good fishing. And I think it would be cool if we can get some guys. Maybe we'll get Clapper on here or Baylog if we can, and get those guys to open up about what they're throwing out there and what guys, because I go up there a lot and fish, and I have guys ask me all the time, like, well, what do I look for when I go up there? And they're right. If you've never been to the Great Lakes or the St. Lawrence River or anything, like, it's really intimidating when you go to some of these places. And maybe we can have some really, like, I know a lot of the regionals, like around here, like I think the Buckeye BFL regional, wasn't it on the Potomac or the James or somewhere a year or two ago? Maybe in the fall. And most people from here don't understand tidal water, you know. So it would be awesome to get some guys that are really good there, kind of explain the tidal water. So I'm hoping that we can give people that, and people will really be receptive to that.
Yeah, and we're going to concentrate on not only boat guys, but we'll also have some kayak guys on here too, and get their perspectives. Some bank guys. I mean, I know some guys over in Ohio that absolutely crush it on the bank. So we're going to be just well-rounded as far as what we're going to talk about, and I'm really excited to really get this kicked off and really get going, and get some of these guys that you may not hear from all the time, but you always see them on top of the leaderboard, and get their perspective on what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about, like, I see a lot of stuff that Clint Outlaw posts, you know, and he's always in a kayak, maybe having him as a guest. And who knows, maybe we can get the Fluke Master on here, you know? Yeah. And I know soon, you and I are both excited. I mean, maybe a lot of people probably don't know this that don't know me personally, but Lee Sisson is a very good friend of mine. And he kind of like was my mentor. And Rick Schreiber helped me a lot get started with the balsa. You know, he builds the laser lures. Rick's a great guy, one of my close friends. But Lee has been in the industry since like he was in the industry when all of the hard plastic baits were actually molded in America. A lot of them were molded right up here and outside of Chicago at Plastech, Land O'Lakes Tackle. They've got all these molds, and I've been up there and toured the place. I buy some product from them actually, and like Lee has a story about the very first buzzbait that they ever seen, you know, and I'll let him tell it, but it ended up being a lunker lure now. And like Jim Bagley, I guess, said, well, that's stupid. I don't want that. And now look where it is. So Lee has all these stories, you know, about the evolution of baits and tackle and stuff that he built for Strike King back when they built, you know, what's the shallow running Strike King bait? Looks like an egg. It's on the Spin Scout. Remember those?
Oh, Spin
Like
Scout.
Lee
Yeah.
has built so much stuff, and he has so many stories about when the Strike King place burned. Like it might have been 40 years ago. You know what I mean? And he stepped up and helped them and built a lot of stuff in his place. And so,
Man.
and anybody that has ideas about who to have on, man, make sure that you let us know, because that might be the challenge, is coming up with topics each week and coming up with guests. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, if you're somebody out there that's interested and has a perspective, let us know, and maybe we'll have you on the show as a guest too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe at times we can have 3 or 4 guys on here, and we can just
Yeah,
have a conversation about a technique. And
absolutely.
and hey, real quick, I'm always looking for quality pro staffers.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a pro staff manager, Matt. Matt knows him. He's a great guy. But I'm looking for guys that will actually promote the product, send pictures. Just to be blunt, not just get their pro staff discount, or their free baits, depending on what level they're on. And so that's PH Custom Lures Pro Staff 1, and it's the letter 1. Don't spell it out, at gmail.com. Anybody that's interested, I would love to have you aboard, but I want to make sure I get guys that are active on social media and take pictures of fish with the baits that they've caught them on. So, and that's the last time I'm going to plug PH. So,
well, we're going to talk about PH here in a minute. But yes, Mario is great. When people ask me about pro staffs and things like that, you guys have really built a great culture there. And what I love about the pro staff is just what you said. If you promote the baits, if you use the baits, if you post things, then you guys have different levels, and it's a really fair assessment. So yeah, I would encourage anybody interested in that to reach out to Mario and Phil via that email address. So Phil, you mentioned it. You're the owner of PH Custom Lures, also Old School Balsa. So how did it all start for you? How did you get into balsa? How did you get into particularly making baits?
well, how about how I got into fishing? And then I want to hear how you got into it, because I don't know if we've ever talked about that.
I don't think so.
I was lucky. I had like an awesome childhood. And my dad, he drag raced, and we always hunted and we fished. And like I can remember when I was about, I don't even know if I was like 3 or 4 years old. I remember dad and mom were taking us to a pond, and my brother caught like a 10-inch bluegill on a Snoopy rod. And I could remember, I just turned 60. I can remember that so vividly. Yeah. Him catching that big giant bluegill. And when you're that little, it looks like a whale. Yeah. And then and after, like, I remember, like, we would go to like Whitewater State Park and stuff. It's like almost a 400-acre lake. And I remember, like, and I'm still in love with this bait today, is we would go over there in the summer, and it had a lot of grass and back then, heck, like when I was little, we fished with Zebco 33s and loose speed sticks, the old black fiberglass ones. And I would remember, like, dad would take us over there, and like it was like the biggest thing ever. It was better than going to get in a Happy Meal.
Yeah.
Like a Happy Meal was a big deal too. But when we got to go fishing, like, you couldn't sleep at night. And I remember catching them on tiny torpedoes, Heddens. And we would go over there, and dad would tie us both on like a little black with the white rib tiny torpedo. And we would this lake is like a fish factory back then, especially. And we would like slaughter them. And then I remember learning to fish a worm with like a man's jelly worm, like a 6-inch. And I remember we would throw like strawberry and blueberry and I mean, I was hooked. Like it's been my life. Like I couldn't imagine having a life where I sat around and played video games. And I know that's what people nowadays like, but like when my brother and I and my buddies, when we had time out of school, like we would take rods and reels to school and we would go fishing, go fish a pond or go wade the river for smallies. I live by the Whitewater River is lousy with smallies. That's what we did, and when we were like we would go, like, even in the winter, like we would take a pack of hot dogs and buns and go sit on the riverbank and build a fire and fish for carp in the winter. I mean, that's how I grew up. And then as I got into it, I remember my Uncle Marshall, he joined Bass. And this may have been like in 1970 or like I was young. And I remember he would give me the old Bassmasters and I would read them. And like they had Harry and Charlie and all this stuff. So, And then I grew up with like I grew up in the days of like Bill Dance and Tommy Martin and Roland Martin. And what people don't realize now is all this technology is cool. Those guys went to giant lakes in little boats and they wrecked those fish and they caught them based on instincts.
Yep.
I mean, the flasher was a big deal back then. And so as time went on, I got into tournament fishing and I fished with a club called Rushville Bassmasters. And those guys were all great to me. I learned so much. Got my own boat. I fished as out of the back of the boat every time. And he wasn't a co-angler then. It was just a club tourney. Everybody was equal. So you were fishing against the guy in the front, but it was never like you were fishing against the guy in the front. You know what I mean? Like, we would just pair up whoever wanted to go. And I had so much fun then. And I remember going to Kentucky every spring. We would have a tourney in March down there, and it was a lot of fun. And then time went on. I fished BFLs, and I fished Everstarts, and I fished some FLW series. And I got to meet a lot of people in the industry that way. And then Bill Owen was in my garage. I used to paint. I did custom painting for a long time. Never had a card, never advertised. And Bill Owen was out in the garage, and he's like, well, "Why don't we make a balsa bait?" And I'm like, well, I don't know nothing about it. But I had been to Rick Schreiber's shop enough, and sat around with him and drank pop and watched him make baits. And I asked him if he actually cared if I made balsa baits, and he's like, "No, I'll help you." So I couldn't say enough about Rick. Rick is a great guy. And
he built some great baits too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I won a BFL once that had like 201 boats on the river back when we had big fields. I won it on his bait. And then I remember being on WLW radio because I won a BFL down there on the river. And I said that I caught it on a laser lure. And I did. I had like a 14-pound bag out of the river. And everybody's like, "No, you're lying just because you like Rick. That's not what you caught it on." I'm like, I caught every single fit. You know what I mean? It was on his LZ1. And his LZ1 is one of the best flat baits ever built, in my opinion. And I don't know that. I mean, I talked to Rick yesterday, actually, but I don't know if he actually has a website now, but it wouldn't be hard to get with me and track him down if you wanted some of his baits.
He does have a website, but you can't order from it. You can see.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
You can see the baits, and he has a color chart and all of that. He obviously LZ1 is probably. I mean, that has to be his most popular. That's just an awesome bait.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable, and it's not. And flat bait, we'll get into this some other time. But flat baits, this can be a technique thing or something. But flat baits aren't just for cold water. I know that's what we all hear, and I've even said that. I've been on so many other podcasts, and I always try to say that. I mean, like, look on the Ohio River, like a wee bait or something has been a staple. There's been tens of thousands of dollars won on a wee bait when the water's 85 degrees. So, and then Billy and I started, we were buying like panels of wood from this place called Hamilton Hobbies over in Hamilton, Ohio. And we'd go over and buy like a sheet of balsa, and we'd cut them out with a bandsaw and shape them with fingernail files. And I just kept playing around. And then I met Lee Sisson, and Lee started cutting bodies for me, and I started learning how to build them the way Bagley's did it. And it just took off from there. And now I have two of my own machines, and I had some financial help. A really good friend of mine come to me and said, "I want to be part of it," years ago. And he invested a little money, and a good little bit of money. I mean, enough to get me started. And then Lee one day is like, "I've been doing this for all these years." And he's like, "I went out of the balsa industry." So he had sold out before, and then he was so addicted to it, he got back into it. But this time I bought him out, and I fished with Lee. Lee's a great guy. Lee's come and deer hunted with me a lot, stayed at my house and stuff. And, I couldn't say enough good things about Lee, and I'm really excited to have him on here because it won't just be like, he has so much knowledge and so much history in the fishing industry, and can tell you about how the way that so many different styles of baits came about. That I think people will find that really, really interesting to hear his story, and that show might be longer. It might be longer than an hour.
Yeah, that one might be a 2 or 3 parter because Lee. I mean, he's like you said, he's got so much knowledge. He's just like a dictionary of bass fishing lures. It's just insane. So what was that first bait that you and Bill kind of started off with?
I think the first one. Hell, man, it's been so long ago, Matt. I think the first. I know this is awful, but I sniff a lot of lacquer fumes because I don't use water-based stuff. I think the first one that I ever made might have been the Hunt and Pea. and
Okay.
they were all shaped with a fingernail file, and like I've always been a huge Bagley's fan. Like the old B1s and B2s were just ridiculously good, you know. And um, I know that like I wanted a square bill, but I didn't want one that was like completely rounded. And not that there's anything wrong with completely rounded, but I liked flat baits too, and I was like a huge fan of those. And so my hunting key has kind of a flat side. You know, it's a round bait, and then I flattened off both sides a little, so you get some of that flat flash. You know, especially in the
Mhm.
fold baits. And then we made the Crazy Ace, and at the time the Crazy Ace came about, we were sitting eating dinner at my house, and my wife at the time had bought like this net from like some hobby place or something. I don't know. It was a little net, like a fishing net you hang on the wall, and it had like fake baits all over it. And there was a little bait that was kind of shaped like the old Bayou Boogies, you know, if you remember
Yep.
those. And but it had a V-shaped mouth. Well, then this guy was trying to make one around at the time, and he had sent me one because he said he couldn't get it to work to play with. And so we come about with that with the Crazy Ace, and James Hall at the editor for Bassmaster is a good friend of mine, and James got wind of it. He's come home with me, and they put it in the magazine. There was like, I think it was in maybe like 2013. It's when I was just getting kind of started. I hadn't been doing it but 3 or 4 or 5 years maybe. They did a whole article on that bait, and today it's like I've seen some guys copy it. I've seen some copies done of it, you know, other like, you know, like garage builders. But I think it's probably the only, to my knowledge, it might be the only prop bait on the market that doesn't just come at you. And we make a lot of the Devil's Horse style prop baits and
Yep.
different things, the bluegill shaped ones, you know. But the Crazy Ace, when you twitch it, it has a spinner on the back. It like, and you know, it'll jump and dart right and left and kind of dodges under the water. And when we were first doing it, I remember we went to St. Clair, and it was right after the spawn, and Jimmy Pickett was one of my best friends, and this was before he passed away. And we were up there, me and him and Bill Lowen, and we just like wrecked them big smallies on that Crazy Ace, just a bone white one. And I think it was kind of on the tail end of the mayfly hatch.
Okay.
And then it just kind of took off, you know what I mean? And I still make them today, and it's a pain in the butt to build it and seal that mouth and everything. But it's unique. They don't
It is.
yeah, I
It,
don't think there's anything out there, and it just really catches them.
yeah. I would struggle even how to really describe. It's like a prop bait that has a mouth.
Right,
I think is about the best way I can describe it.
right, and it's a flat bait
It's not
too.
very big. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you know what? I guess I'll learn to be more prepared. I wasn't even planning on talking about it.
No,
I'd have
that's
to get
okay.
up and go in the other room to get one. But anybody
No,
wants to see it can get on my website or TW
yeah,
or a lot of places, and it's called the Crazy Ace. But and then it's just took and I want to say too that like I've been really blessed. Like I've got to make like we're still guiding pheasant hunters at a place in Ohio. You know, I got a guide tomorrow with my daughter. I
yeah,
have German short hairs, and she does that. And I used to guide elk hunters before I had kids, and I actually was a paramedic for 20 years, but I only worked every third day, so it left a lot of time open. And
yeah.
I would back when I was young, I would just take off and go to Colorado the end of August and come home till the end of November. And
Wow.
so I'm really like I'm really blessed, and I want people to know that I realize that how lucky I am that everything I do every day for the most part is about hunting or fishing, and don't have a lot of money. I'm not going to die and have this big estate to leave my daughters or anything, but I've had a lot of fun. I've had a good life, and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, and it's awesome to see the growth. I can remember. Oh gosh, I don't remember what year it was, but there was a Bassmaster article that you were featured in, and it showed your shop, showed a few baits and things like that. And I remember getting that Bassmaster article and reading it and going, "Holy hell, this guy's like right here in Indiana."
Yeah,
And to see it from there to where you're going and how you're branching out, and it's been awesome. And man, you do make some of the best quality baits out there. I don't know many manufacturers that put their personal cell phone on the back of the
yeah.
card for somebody to call, but you do.
Yeah. And I've been in almost all the major fishing publications, like multiple times, a lot of them. And I never, like, when I was throwing that torpedo when I was little, I would have never dreamed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I remember, like, I've been in Bassmasters and FLW. Of course, I've never been in MLF, and I think you kind of have to maybe be a paid sponsor. I don't know if I've never even seen an MLF magazine, but they used to feature my stuff and do articles in them. And then I remember when I got in like Field and Stream, I'm like, are you serious? You guys want to come here? And you know what I mean? Like, I was like, and then it was Outdoor Life, and I'm like, I couldn't believe it. And then Country Living magazine came to my shop one time, and I'm like, what does this have to do with with the fishing, the outdoor industry? But they sent a writer and a photographer, and they're local people, and I knew them both, and they wanted to do an article about handmade stuff, handcrafted American made stuff, and they came and did it. And the funny thing that I've noticed is, like, I've had so many writers in my shop, and like, I had a guy who, he came one time. He had been in Iraq. He was a photographer for People magazine, and I'd be lying if I said his name because I don't remember it, but he was a good dude. He came to my house and he stayed like 2 or 3 days, and he come home, and one of the magazines, I can't remember if it was maybe Phil. Anyway, they hired him to come take photos and stuff at my shop. And I remember when he showed up, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? You get all this attention and you're in this little shop?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what everybody says." So yeah, and I remember like he like wore me out. I remember taking pictures of my baits hanging on the side of a cement block wall by a pond, and this guy really knew how to do. And I think he took hundreds of pictures to get like 3 that they put in or 5 or something that they put in the magazine. So
Right.
I've been really blessed. And enough about me. How'd you get your start? Because as long as we've been friends, I don't know how long you've been fishing.
Oh man. So whenever somebody asks me how long I've been fishing, I don't remember a time when I wasn't fishing.
That's good.
So I grew up. I grew up in the Kokomo, Indiana area, and back then it was kind of a booming town. We had Chrysler and GM was there. So I grew up actually in the city until I was around kindergarten, first grade. We moved out to the country, but even in the city, I can remember going out and practice casting out in the backyard of my grandparents' house with an old Snoopy pole and a Zepco 33 and all that stuff. We used to put practice plugs on, and we'd go out there and we'd cast away. And then there's Wildcat Creek is the first fish that I remember catching. And it's a tiny little creek there, and man, I was super fortunate that my parents decided to move out to the country, and when we did, I grew up on the banks of the Kokomo Reservoir. I know a lot of people say the Ohio River is tough, but my God, the Kokomo Reservoir is one of the toughest bodies of water to fish. But super blessed to fish out there, and much like you, I didn't grow up just bass fishing. It was we went fishing for everything: bluegill, crappie, carp, and yeah, I've been ate up with it ever since. Fish out of a boat for a long time. Started fishing tournaments probably out of the boat with Dad when I was around probably I guess 7 or 8 years old. And fished Kokomo, Messinawall, and a few other places that would let me fish tournaments at that age. And we had a lot of fun doing that, and traveled around and fished in Arkansas and everywhere. And then it was kind of one of those crossroad deals when you kind of run out of money in the bass boat world. You're like, well, what do you do? And that's right when kayaks exploded. And I was looking at the kayak market, and that's how I got into kayak fishing. Is quite honestly ran out of money to buy a boat or anything like that. So got into kayak fishing, and then still boat tournament fish with some buddies every once in a while, and probably spend more time in my kayak now or I do spend more time in my kayak now than in a boat. But it's still fun to cut up with some of the guys too in the boat scene and fish out of the back of a boat every once in a while. But Yeah, I mean, much like you, Phil, like super, super fortunate to grow up in a family that was just ate up with the outdoors. Even though we lived in a city,
Yeah.
every weekend was consumed with doing something outdoors, whether go out and go mushroom hunting, or we would go out trapping. So
Hmm.
I've trapped, I've
Hmm.
fished, I've hunted, I've
Yeah.
done it all. And man, it was I can't remember a Saturday that we didn't do something outdoors.
Yeah. 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 People don't realize. And I know there's people who could care less about the outdoors,
Yep.
but I just can't imagine like if you said, "Hey Phil, let's go catch turtles," I'd be like, "Okay." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm
Yeah.
60 years old and I still love it. Like, look, like as I got older, like I don't want to get out of bed sometimes, but like as soon as I'm out there, like I get tired, like deer hunting, uh, and after you do it for a while, but like still like it may be hard to get out of bed, but as soon as my feet hit the floor, I jump in the shower and like I get to the lake, I can't wait to see the sun come up.
I
Like to
know.
me, that's one of the coolest things in the world, watching everything come alive on the lake. And I know that sounds simple and maybe that makes me a simple person. I'm fine with that, but I just love to watch the sun come up over the water. And I can't imagine like hell, I would go carp fishing today. I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
bass fishing is my life and it's my livelihood, but I like if you said let's go catch sucker fishing in the river here used to be a big deal with the old timers,
Yeah.
in the winter months. I'd be like, sure. Like
Yeah.
I enjoy doing anything in the outdoors.
Yeah. I'm the exact same way. I don't get to hunt as much. I've really focused on fishing probably the last 5 6 years. Uh,
Mhm.
but man, I fish up until it ices, and then if there's enough ice, I ice fish, and then as soon as it's back off, and I'm the same way, Phil. Like if somebody tells me, hey, the crappie are biting on Iona Lake, I'm gone. Like
Yeah,
I don't care what
me
it is,
too.
I'm gonna go chase fish.
Me too. And you ever wonder, and maybe this is going to sound sentimental, but like like if you ever wondered, like, and this is going back to scoping, and I'm not trying to bash scoping. It's going to sound like I am, but I had something happen last year when I fish offshore a lot. Like I
Hmm.
don't just use PH custom lures. I make a couple deep crankbaits, but I like really love the ledge fish and stuff like that. And I was fishing out there and I saw these two young guys, and I don't mean this to be trash. I'm trying to make a point here.
Yep.
Like these young guys were running around. They were both on the front deck of almost a brand new Skeeter. And these guys were young. They couldn't have been over 21 or 22. And they were live scoping. And I was about 200 yards offshore, and they kept coming and they kept coming. And I'd look at them, and they started out there like 400 or 500 yards away, and they got the trolling motor on high. They're just looking. And when they got about 20 yards, I said, "Hey boys," they didn't even know I was there, dude.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wonder especially like in the high school fishing and stuff, are these kids learning are they fishing because, and I know this doesn't apply to everybody. I'm not trying
Hmm.
to like generalize or sound like some fuddy old man, but is it only just about like catching them, or is it part of the deal to me is like being on the water, dude. I mean, like just being out there. Like I don't want to miss anything. Like I think sometimes I've done pretty good in tourneys, and like if I'm out there and like if I hear the shad, like I know it if something's schooling shad 100
Yeah.
yards away, as long as I can hear. Like I
Yeah.
pick up on all that, and I try to listen for a fish blowing up if you're fishing shallow. And but people get so tuned in on that box. I just can't imagine that is the same experience that you and I had, like when you were at Kokomo Reservoir and you were throwing a little worm around or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I think about it, and I'm the same way. As a matter of fact, I might start dabbling a little bit with forward facing to understand it more. I really don't
I'm going
have.
to too.
I don't have the real desire to probably use it a lot, because
Me
me
neither.
personally, there's nothing. There's not a feeling out there like throwing that worm out there, throwing that jig out there, or throwing that tube. Most folks know that I love throwing a tube and feeling the bottom for myself
Hmm.
and going, oh, and feeling that thump and going, oh man, that's a branch. Like that feels like a
Right.
tree. Oh, that's a hard bottom. Oh, that's a rock bottom. Oh,
Right.
And actually letting my senses help guide what I'm going to do that day. Like fishing offshore and finding a rock pile and going, oh, yep, there it is. I feel it versus I just see it.
Yeah. And I worry too about I worry about what it's doing to the resources too.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially like the crappie guys and like crappies, these guys with live scope, man, they are really, really good at crappie fishing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of these guys were really, really good crappie fishing before, but now they can't get away. And the thing about crappie fishing, and I know that if you read some of the studies, a certain percentage of bass caught, especially big ones in warm water, they die later. It's called delayed mortality within 5 days. And I'm sure there's going to be guys say, "Oh, he don't know what he's talking about." Read the studies at Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they did in
100%.
Mississippi and some places. And but most bass are turned loose. I hope they are anyway, because we have so many fishermen nowadays, and they don't reproduce like crappies and bluegills. But the thing that worries me like about the crappie thing is most guys eat them.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you get something where you can almost catch every crappie out of a brush pile, and most of those fish are going to be eat. And I love to eat crappies too, but I just don't know how long the delays can keep kicking them out, because like since COVID, like having more fishermen is great. It's great for my business, and it's
Mm-hmm.
great for the economy, buying gas. The guys come in here from and they stay in motels. It's good for everybody. But like the amount of guys fishing now, and I don't know if bass fishing's on a decline. I don't know what species and all that, but just like in general, the guys at the lake is, especially like the walleye guys at Brookville Lake here where I live. It's
Yeah.
incredible how many people fish during the week since COVID.
Yeah.
Like the parking lots will be full on a weekday, and I think like, man, does everybody work from home now, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I've actually
Yeah.
seen guys with laptops out there walleye fishing doing their job,
Yeah.
doing their work, and I'm thinking like, I don't know. I don't know where it's all gonna. I don't know where I don't know if it'll be good or bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's hard to tell. Some statistics out there, I've read some, and try to stay as tuned as I can. But it seems like overall, fishing after COVID is kind of on a somewhat of a decline. You have kayak fishing is still the largest segment that's
Uh
growing.
huh.
But yeah, I mean, you go anywhere, you go to Geist, and hell, Geist charges a pretty penny to put in there now. But you go to Geist, and Geist will be just completely chock full. I bet if I go over there today, and it's not the warmest out there today, but the sun's shining. I bet
Yeah.
that whole parking lot's full, completely
I
full,
guarantee it. And and that's great. Everybody has a right to fish,
hundred
but I
percent.
think that I've sometimes thought that maybe I don't know that banning live scope is the answer. I hate to see our government like really ban anything that someone enjoys doing, and the people that do it, they enjoy doing it as much as you and I like flipping a jig
Mm-hmm. Yep.
or or winding a big crankbait. But maybe they're going to have to change, like Mississippi did, change the krill limit, or maybe if you scope, maybe you just can't keep any fish. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, but I know that I can tell you this much. In my opinion, it's hurting my home lake,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially like the crappie. And I think the walleye guys are using it, and I think they're really good at it. And I know that's a skill set. So I'm not saying, hey, guys that scope suck, they can't fish, whatever. I mean, it's a skill set, the same as learning how to flip or seasonal patterns and all that. It just really worries me what it's doing to the industry and our resources, because our
Well,
population is not getting littler, it's getting bigger.
no, no. I will say something though that has been eye opening. One, Lowen catching him the way he did on the St. John River.
Wasn't
That
that
was
great,
awesome.
dude? I was so proud of him.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then also, I don't know if you saw yesterday, NPFL. So
Yeah.
NPFL is a no scope league.
Hmm.
Guy had 33 pounds,
Ain't that incredible, isn't it?
and there were 4 or 5 bags over 30 pounds, and that's without
Yeah.
scope.
Right.
So, I my biggest worry about live scope is if you Google, if you go out, you look at any YouTube videos, you watch Bassmaster, you watch MLF, you watch any of that. What I don't want is somebody to say, "Hey, I have to have live scope to go fishing." That simply is
Well,
not true. Go
that's the
out
way it
and
is. That's how they feel, a lot of them, isn't it? A lot of people.
Yep. And they don't have the money to invest. My biggest word of encouragement is don't do it. Just go out and enjoy yourself and fish how you want to fish. And don't worry about that noise and feel like you have to have that. I mean, 33 pounds, that's a whale of a bag, man.
Yeah. Well, I like how you always hear, like I hear guys in Indiana, and you heard this how many times at the boat show and at the Indy show that was a couple weeks ago. It doesn't really affect Indiana. The guys aren't doing it here much. Baloney.
Yeah.
I know some guys that are very good at it that I fished against here on Brookville, and if you can't even hardly compete with them now.
Yeah.
Like when those guys show up, they win. And I guess maybe a lot of guys don't realize that they're even scoping. But I mean, I think I don't remember like any technique coming along ever that dominated it like LiveScope dominates now. And I hear guys say, "Oh, it ain't no different than side imaging." It ain't even close to side imaging.
Yeah.
Side imaging, you're looking after the fact. Scoping is in real time. But that being said, I got me an Apex, and I'm fixing to get me a Mega Live 2, and I'm going to play with it some. I can't imagine that I would go do it for 9 hours in a tourney or fun fishing, but I'm going to get it because I do want everybody to know. I think the technology is cool. I mean, I think it's amazing that you can actually do that. And like, I guess I don't know this for sure, but I guess the new like Lowrance is like $1,000 unit that kind of lets most guys can afford that. So it lets guys, you don't have to spend $5,000 if you want to go get it, if you want to play around with scoping. So
that's what I'm looking at right now is and mostly I'm more curious than anything and want to understand it more before before I come too opinionated on it. And I want to understand, see what it does. And I don't know, maybe I will become a scoper. I don't see that happening because, man, I'd love to throw a balsa bait, but it could happen.
Well, you know what's going to happen? Somebody's going to see us this summer on the lake together, and they'll be, look at them suckers. They're hypocrites. They're scoping. Yeah. We better be careful now. We didn't put our foot in our mouth. So, but I don't know. Like, there has been so many cool techniques come along. I'm not talking about electronics or, there's been so many, like you think about it, like since the Cinco, like, like the Cinco, just like, and then like you had the Alabama rig and you had all these different techniques of, I mean, like if you think how innovative the industry's been in the last 20 years, like it's amazing what is out there now. And then tungsten, involved in, tungsten sinkers and then fluorocarbon lines. And I think the fluorocarbon probably started in the saltwater industry. I don't know a whole lot about that other than I use it a lot. But I don't think fluorocarbon is not the answer for everything either, though. And I'm not just talking about topwater baits. You can't use fluoro with topwaters hardly unless it's a buzzer. But I still use mono a lot. And one thing, and this will be maybe like we can do an episode on this. Like we'll talk about it on a flipping episode. We'll have Lowen on here since he's like an outstanding flipper or somebody. Maybe we'll get Denny Brower on here or something. And but like I'm gonna play around like more with flipping with mono like we used to in the past.
Oh yeah, a little more stretch.
More stretch. And I think what's happens, it seems to me like, and there'll be 500 people get on here and say I don't know what I'm talking about. And look, every time I flip, I've got 20 or 25 pound fluorocarbon on, and I flip with braid a lot around grass, and sometimes when there's no grass. But have you ever noticed how? And I don't know if it's because like for one thing, like back when we used to have all eagle claw hooks and the older mustads, like they all had those big barbs. Those barbs are on there for a reason. And if you look at all the premium hooks now, there's hardly any barb. But I just know that it seems like, and I had this conversation with Denny Brower before, and I'll tell you what his answer was in a minute. But I don't know if it's because like this, and it's a myth that fluorocarbon doesn't stretch because it does. Yeah. Like just get it and tie it to something solid and pull it. It stretches. It might not stretch as much as big game or strand, but it stretches. And I don't know, but it does have less stretch. So I don't know if it's because our rods are better and they're quicker, or the lack of stretch. But if you notice how it seems to me like I lose more fish flipping nowadays, like they'll come up and throw the bait, or like, have you noticed how, like, if you boat flip a lot of fish, when they, as soon as they hit the carpet, and it's bad to put fish on the carpet. So just want to make sure I throw that in, but we all do it.
Yep.
Have you ever noticed how sometimes the bait just pops out of their mouth? So
Yeah. Or right in the
I'm
net,
wondering,
pops right out.
yeah, and I'm anxious to hear what people say about that. I mean, get with us, and you know, and you know, Matt's the tech guy. I'm not the tech guy at all. Matt knows about all the Facebook and YouTube, but I'm curious to see what guys think. Like, I'm just wondering if, like, I'm definitely going to have a flipping rod in my boat all spring that has 20-pound mono, and I'm wondering if that stretch, maybe, like, I won't tear as big a hook in their mouth, or big a hole in
Yeah.
their mouth,
Yep.
and maybe you won't lose so many. And I don't think with 20 feet of line out that it's going to be that big a deal, like as far as filling bites. And I mean, we did it for years. I mean, there's been millions of dollars won with mono on a flipping rod.
Yeah. I mean, my dad, he Zebco 33 with a 12, 14-pound trialing. That was it. And we hardly lost fish back then. And yeah, no, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this one, Phil. And it's something that I've been going back to, using more and more mono. I've actually started using mono with crankbaits again.
I do it a lot,
Do you?
especially with them flat baits, because
Yeah.
most flat baits have that little hook. And
Yep.
if you don't have a really soft rod, like, this is one question that I get guys call me all the time.
Yeah.
Like, what rod do you use with
Yeah.
those? I use, I use power rods for the most part. I use like a 7 or 7.2. I don't know I don't have one here in my hand, and I don't remember what the numbers, but they're a parabolic bend, and
Mhm.
they're like a moderate action. So they bend all the way to the handle, but they're really soft. If you first fished with one, you'll be like, oh, I don't like this. But those rods, they give. So when you get those bigger fish that can pull enough to tear the hooks out, the little number 6s and 5s,
Mhm.
when they pull under the boat, that rod will bend all the way underneath the boat sometimes. And I
Yeah.
hardly ever, and I keep a loose drag. Those little hooks are so sharp. When those fish hit them, they hook themselves. Like, I don't set the hook cranking to you. I just kind of lean into them and start reeling. And I don't, and that mono helps that too. You get that stretch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know that mono is the right, excuse me. I don't know that mono is the right answer for like throwing jerk baits and stuff like that, because I know you're going to lose some sensitivity and some depth. And I think when you throw a jerk bait on mono, that you don't get as quick an action when you twitch it. Because for years I had an in-ground pool, so I played in the pool like more than anybody, you know. I bet. I mean,
Yeah.
like, to the point of getting under the water and having somebody reeling a bait by my head, so I know they sound like underwater, and that's like cool. If you've never done that, reel a
Yeah.
spinnerbait by your head under the water. Listen to it, and but I think that I think, like, I throw a 10-pound mono a lot with flat baits, and I rarely ever lose a fish. And I fished with guys who lose 3 out of 5 like consistently.
Yeah. I think.
But I would love to hear everybody else's opinion, you know, because I want to learn too. I mean, I'm all about,
Absolutely.
like, I love going with people I've never been with, you know.
Hmm.
I've never been in a boat with somebody I didn't learn,
Yep.
and I bet you haven't either. And you and I've had this conversation too. Like, I know that some of the co-anglers, they get a really bad rap right now. You know, I don't think we would have these circuits without co-anglers, to be
Hmm.
honest. Not on the regional level, because how are you going to police everything? But, like, I have never ever. I've had co-anglers in my boat with Zebco's 33s, and I've had co-anglers with Steve's Daiwas. You know,
Yep.
$1,100 per rod and reel in the boat. I've never had a co-angler in my boat that I didn't learn something from.
Yeah.
Never ever.
Yeah. Yep.
I
Yeah.
think if you did, that's what makes it fun, isn't it? You're
It is.
constantly
It
learning.
is. Yeah. Something. So I work. I work with a kayak and fly shop here in the Indianapolis area. Moving Water Outfitters. They're up in Zionsville, and
Uh-huh.
I've been fishing with those guys. And I don't fly fish. So there's a conventional guy and there's a fly fisherman in the same boat. And I
Uh-huh.
think we're learning just as much off of each other in that situation than anything. And it's been eye opening how finessey those guys are, and how they, their casting ability and where they need to something versus where I would put something is very, very different. And I'm learning more techniques just by going out with somebody that,
Mhm.
fly fishing isn't in my comfort zone, but watching them do it and understanding their technique is actually helping my fishing quite a bit.
Yeah, and they're like really pay attention to detail, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. They're like,
Yeah.
throwing little things and,
Yeah.
and like, they really pay attention to their line and all of that stuff. And, you know, those fly guys, they love talking absolutes too, but, man, watching them fish and it's just like you said, I've never been in a boat with somebody I haven't learned from. And
No,
if
no,
you're just
no.
observant and open to it, you just have to just be a little observant, be open to it, and just watch and discuss in a boat. And believe it or not, you and I have never fished together. We're going to make that happen this year, but I'm hoping to
Like
step
in the
into.
next week or two, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, and we'll have some stuff on the YouTube channel with some of our fishing adventures.
Yeah, I have this story real quick that I think's funny. I'm not a fly fisherman either. I'd never done it before. Well, back when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I guided elk hunters in Colorado, and I guided at this place called Lake Fork Ranch, and there was a little. It's on the Conejos River, there in southern Colorado, and there was a Lake Fork branch of the Conejos, and it's this little tiny stream that cuts up through the mountains. And look, you can jump across it almost anywhere. Like it's not more than 10 foot wide in the widest place, maybe.
Yeah,
And there's this little trout in there that is supposed to be like the only place in the world you can catch this Lake Fork species of, and I can't remember. This has been hell 30 years ago. I can't remember if it was like a cutthroat or a brook trout. The fly fisherman guys are going to crucify me. But
yeah,
look, if you caught a nice one, it was like a little bigger than your hand.
yeah,
And they would have these college kids come up in the summer, and they built these little things so these little tiny trout can go up the stream, and get through the rapids. And so anyway, I had this guy one time, and he was like real eccentric, and kind of reminded you of the guys that you would see off of a Norman Rockwell poster, smoking a
yeah,
pipe. And
yeah,
and I took him elk hunting, and he killed his elk like real quick, right? And he brought it like this packable Orvis fly rod, and he's like, "Hey man, I just want you to take me fly fishing for the rest of my hunt." And I'm like, "Cool." And I did that with a lot of guys. And what I would do is we would ride horses up to mountain lakes or wherever, and I would just sit on the ground and watch them. And I was fine with that. These guys, like, they would have a blast. And this guy it was on his bucket list to catch one of these little Lake Fork trout. And there's probably some guys that are going to know what I'm more about this than one, because I can't remember now. But it was the only place in the world you could catch this little 10-inch trout, and a 10-incher was a big one. So we're up there, and he has like a little short fly rod. I don't think it was much more than 6 foot or 6.5 foot, because it's real tight with the willows on the creek. And I remember the flies were like so tiny. I'd never
yeah,
seen flies that little before. So this guy, he catches him one, right? And he's like all happy, and we took all these pictures. And he's like, "Do you want to try it?" And I'm like, "Man, I've never been fly fishing before." And he had this one little box that opened, and he might have had like 10, 12 flies in there. That was all he had for the whole trip, right? And I never did that before, I said. He's like, "Oh, come on, it's easy." So when I would whip him back, and I think he told me he had like a 2 or 3 pound tippet or whatever, on his fly rod. I would flip him back, and boom, I come back, and there's no fly. But after I lost like 3 of his flies, he took the rod from me. He said, "That wasn't enough. We'll teach you some other time." Because he's like, "I ain't going to have enough flies." So I lost all of his stuff, never made one good cast.
oh,
And he's like, and he was actually, he was like a great guy, but he was like, like real, like he had to have the look and all this.
yeah,
And
oh yeah,
I met a lot of really cool people hunting and fishing.
yeah,
And
it's
I've
great.
met people from all over the world, actually, like that I'm still friends with, like even in different countries, that I'm
Yeah,
still friends with because of hunting and fishing, that I talk
yeah,
to on WhatsApp or whatever on a regular basis.
yeah. I was gonna say you've got those buddies down in what is that, South Africa?
Yeah, I hunted over there. I still
Yeah,
talk to them on WhatsApp.
yeah,
They had some fish when I was there that I wanted to go catch this one fish, and a lot of people will know more about this than me. It has these really big teeth, like long
mm,
daggers. And we were going to go catch some of them, and I took some balsa baits with me, and I'm like, man, they'll like crush these balsa baits. Like
yeah,
it'll be a one fish deal. But we
yeah,
didn't get to go. We got busy hunting
yeah,
and buffalo hunting, and like we hunted like they have guineas there, and they're just the same as our guineas that like these farmers have on their barns.
Yeah.
But those guineas would fly into grain fields during the day to feed. So we hunted guineas just like doves with shotguns, and like guineas are wild there. They were like everywhere where I were at. And I tell you one thing, it's a little expensive. If from the hunting end, it's cheaper than going to like or to Alaska or somewhere. But if anybody that's if like everybody wants a lot of, or not everybody, but a lot of people like they want to go to these warm places and lay on the beach. Man, I'm going to tell you, going to Africa, whether you hunt or fish or you just want to go see it, is the coolest experience of your life.
Yeah.
And there are places that are so wild, like there's no one around and you can't see any kind of lights. You know, even like in Colorado, I hunted all the most of the western states, maybe not all. When you're on the mountains, you can look down and see lights at night from a town. But there's places in Africa where there's no lights at night,
Right.
and the sky is so bright and the stars. It's just cool as hell to go see it. And you can go on a sightseeing trip to Africa for a lot less than you can go on a cruise to Alaska for. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
Even though a cruise to Alaska would be cool, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's got to be a great trip too. So,
Yeah.
Well, Phil, episode 1, season 1 is in the books here. We're going to try to release every Wednesday on all the platforms, including YouTube, and then all of the podcasting platforms. Again, our email address is the Limit Podcast 5, the numeral 5 at gmail.com, Instagram, the Limit Podcast, Facebook, the Limit Podcast, and YouTube, the Limit Podcast. Give us a like, give us a share, and subscribe to the channel. Promise you guys that we will bring you different content every week, and really looking forward to it, Phil. I'm really excited to be doing this and to be doing this podcast and this adventure with you.
Right. And I think we talked about having some limit fishing apparel, like some nice sunscreen type, you know, like wicking shirts and stuff. Maybe as time goes on, have some of that. If people think that's something they'd be interested in, you know, it wouldn't be real expensive like some of the other brands that are out there. But I think it would be cool to maybe have limit fishing apparel and stuff. So
absolutely. Yeah, and YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, email, get a hold of us. We'd love to hear from all of you, and you know, take somebody fishing. That's kind of how I want to end this one. Is take somebody fishing, get them out in the outdoors. Phil and I were both really fortunate to grow up in communities where we went out and enjoyed the outdoors. So get out, enjoy the outdoors, and we will talk to you guys next week on The Limit. Thanks, Phil.
Make sure to like and subscribe.
That's it.
And stay tuned because we may give away some PH custom lures, a couple baits every single podcast to a viewer. So
if there's a really good comment that Phil and I like, maybe we'll send you some baits.
Yep. Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.